She walked away from the perfect career path and built something better on her own terms. I'd like to welcome Tammy Ward to the Fox Den. Welcome, Tammy.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. So you are in Fredericton, New Brunswick, is that correct?
Yes, down on the
Uh,
East Coast.
Out on the East Coast. And what are you doing out there in Fredericton, New Brunswick? Walk me through what it is that you do for a living.
Now I am speaking. I'm doing a lot of public speaking and writing. Finishing a big book. I have a short story that's coming out and a journal coming out soon. But I talk a lot about my experience in the RCMP and trying to create better communication within workplaces. I saw too many people suffering in silence, and I just got to a point in my career where I made a decision that I can still help and serve people without a uniform. And I left.
So you were working for the RCMP in what format exactly?
So I was a sergeant, and at the time that I left, I was working in our domestic violence portfolio, had overseen part of the auxiliary program, and I was working at a headquarters in Fredericton.
Okay. And in that position, did that allow you to go to other places of Canada and explore other communities that you wouldn't have otherwise visited?
Oh, definitely. I've been pretty much everywhere across Canada with the RCMP. I also had the opportunity to go to France when they did the rededication of Vimy, and I actually got to go to Trinidad and Tobago with an opportunity that arose for me to go down there for a week. So I had seen a lot. One of the best places or most remote places that I got to visit in Canada was up in Nunavut in a little hamlet called Kimmeroot. And that was an exceptional experience. Just, it's above the tree line, so literally no trees. And it was an Inuit community of approximately 400 people. And it was amazing. Like, there wasn't even a paved road. It was a really different style of policing, and it was an experience and a place to see that most people will never experience in a lifetime. So it was definitely a blessing to be able to see it and to meet the people. And I came home with quite a few carvings of dancing bears and nunchucks and all kinds of things. Yeah, it was pretty
That
special.
that's most people don't get a chance to go to Baffin Island. That's a massive island, right, in northern Canada. And what exactly were you doing in that community when you were there? How were you helping the people?
So I flew in to relieve another RCMP officer. So it's a two-person post. And basically you work Monday to Friday, 8 to 4, 8:30 to 4:30. And then the rest of the clock, you're on call. So basically you're policing 24/7, 365 days a week when you're up there. And we, same as anywhere else other than traffic, we, have all the same rules with the criminal code. So that was it. When I flew in, as I said, it was just for a relief for 6 weeks, and I love kids. So I went and I got three soccer balls, and I made sure before I flew up that there was a place I could blow them up. So my first day on the job, I actually went to the school, got the soccer balls filled with air, and there's three little boys outdoors playing. And I went with the police car or truck and went down and started playing soccer with them. And oh my gosh, within 20 minutes, there was at least 30 kids there. And the whole time I was there, they'd come to the detachment and they'd say, "Tammy, we play soccer today." And my standard response was, "If you don't make me work, we play soccer." So I played soccer with the kids almost every single day. And it was really nice to see because we had an admin clerk, Pudlow, and she was from the community. And as I was there, some of the older boys were starting to come in and ask to borrow my soccer ball. And I was like, "If you bring it back, you can borrow it." And they always brought it back. And after this happened, I think it was the second time, Pudlow said, "This is really strange." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Those boys have only ever been out back. They've never come in the front door." And so just the
Oh,
relationship
wow.
I was able to create. And it was just by bringing a soccer ball and kicking it around with some kids.
Wow. That's pretty
Yeah,
special.
yeah, it was. It was really amazing. I have some amazing photos of up there playing soccer with the kids. And before I flew out, I hosted a big tournament. And so I was just going to do it with the little kids, but then the older ones wanted a chance too. So we had a tournament, and pretty much the whole community came out. The co op sponsored it. So I had treats for everybody that showed up. And the winning team got a soccer ball to keep, and the extra ball went to the school. So it was really nice. It was nice to give back and be a part of. And I was taken care of too when I was there by the locals. I got invited to go fishing, which I wasn't very good at because the way they fished was definitely not how I fished with my dad and my grandpa.
Yeah.
I don't spear, I don't grab and smuck it on the head on a rock. So the first time I went fishing with three of the local ladies, I didn't catch anything. And the next day, the lady that ran the post office called, and she said, basically, I hear you like fish. I'm like, yes. And she goes, I hear you no good. And I went, yes. She goes, come down. I got fish for you. And it turned out her and her husband had a boat, and they would go out fishing quite often, and they shared in the community. And that was the nice thing about being there, is that when somebody hunted or fished, that when they came back, the entire animal was used. You'd see the pelts outside being stretched. They'd have I didn't attend these, but they would, if they caught a seal, they would have a big boil and they would share the meat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was
So,
really,
so that idea of using every single part of the animal, that's definitely something that they do up in those communities.
oh, definitely, yeah. They eat the entire animal, they share it. You'll see the pelts outdoors being stretched and cleaned, and then they use it to make boots and moccasins and clothing, and yeah, nothing goes to waste up there.
Nothing left behind, and that's their culture, isn't it?
Yeah, and they still use it, still practice it.
Wow. What actually were you noticing as far as challenges living up in that such a small community? What kind of challenges were the people facing in their lives?
Oh, well, all they had there was a co-op and a northern store. So if you didn't have the means to fly into Iqaluit or into Ottawa to go shopping, you didn't have access, or you couldn't go like buy clothes or shoes, or so you could see who didn't have. That was hard. And even the cost of things. So this would be, what was I there? 12 to 15 years ago now. Oh my gosh. But a can of pop was $3.59 at that time. One can.
Wow.
Because everything either comes in on the barge, which is only twice a year, once when the ice cracks enough that a barge can come into the hamlet, or just before things freeze up. And that is it. Other than that, everything is flown in. So you can order groceries, and then they're flown in from Iqaluit when the plane comes in. And the plane doesn't come every day. It can only come when the cloud cover was high enough, because it came in between two mountains to land, and it was on a dirt strip. It was really interesting. And when you traveled on the plane, I've never been on a plane like it. The seats made me think of being camping. They were just little canvas seats that folded, and that way they could push them back if there wasn't people, and they filled the front of or between you and the pilot were groceries and things.
Oh, wow. So that sounds like very adventurous stuff for
Pretty
someone to do.
remote. Yeah, and
Pretty
if we
remote, yeah.
lost telecommunication, which if the tower went down or anything, we had no outside communication. That happened once when I was there for 2 days. We had
And you had no communication with the outside world.
no, nothing. We couldn't radio. Luckily, nothing big happened. But yeah,
Wow.
it's just the fact of
Well,
life.
well, let me bring you back. Let me rewind the tape a little bit. What did you think you were going to be doing for your career when you were 18 years old? Did you see yourself going into the RCMP?
Never. Um, I grew up dancing. I was going to be a ballerina, and I decided to go to university and get a real job. or degree, and I had finished my master's degree, or not my master's, sorry, my bachelor's. And then I was taking some more, I was working as a counselor, and then I was taking more courses towards a master's. And then my boyfriend at the time and his friends were all writing the exams and talking about how hard it is, and no one ever gets in on the first try. And I spoke up and said, oh, I should write the test. And their response was, you're too little, you'd never get in. And I'm a little bit stubborn. So when someone tells me I can't do something, I'll do it just because. And what happened was I wrote the test. I passed. My boyfriend at the time didn't. Only one of the guys in that circle passed that test. And then we had to go through all the different stages. So the next stage was the physical fitness. He and I both passed. Then there was some more written tests. There was a psychological test. There was an interview. And I just kept going through it all. And then I got an offer to go to training, and I honestly was like, I don't even know if I want to do this, but okay, it won't look bad on my resume, so off I went.
Yeah.
And then once I came back and I started with the on-the-job training portion, I was like, ooh, I actually like this. Because when I was in training, I loved law. And I ended up with a 98.2 average in law when I graduated. And I'd get up every morning and I'd get on the treadmill or something. I did cardio for an hour every morning at depot. So then I would just study and read my law. And at one point I thought, maybe I should just quit this and go back and get a law degree. But then I did the on-the-job training and I was like, ooh, I like this. The adrenaline, no 2 days are the same. It could be a Saturday and relatively quiet, which is unusual. And then on a Monday or a Tuesday, all heck could break loose and you would think it was a Saturday. Like there's no rhyme, no reason. You know, there's certain times of the month where you'd be busier, but it was interesting.
What kind of stories stick out for you while you were on the job with the RCMP? Did anything happen that stuck with you as an important memory?
Oh, lots. I think one of the biggest ones, that changed me and kind of changed the direction of my career, was in 2014, the shootings in Moncton. So we had 5 officers shot, 3 fatal. I was around the corner at my best friend's house and the first shots were fired, and I left her and went into work. And at the time I was living in Fredericton, but I was in Moncton for a conference that I was supposed to be taking part in the next morning. And I ended up staying there for 4 months. And I went in, as I said, right after the shots, and I helped set up the command post and get resources and cars and water and everything for the ERT team. And then the next morning, I drove back to Fredericton, got my uniform and gun, and went back down and went out on the street. And we were still looking for him until he was found the next evening, the man that killed the officers. And then I ended up, originally I was supposed to stay for 2 weeks to help backfill. And then I got asked to stay as the operational NCO. So I took over the team that the men were actually murdered on. And that ended up being for a 4-month. It was supposed to be 1, and then it was 3 more. And
right. Was that the worst mass shooting in New Brunswick's history?
In New Brunswick, yes. And then unfortunately in 2020, we had Portapique, which was in Nova Scotia. And that was the one where one officer was murdered, but there was a lot of people that were killed. And that went on throughout the night and into the morning.
Where was that one?
Portapique, Nova Scotia.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't involved in that one. I did know the officer who was killed, Heidi.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So was it as a result of some of these really intense experiences that you decided maybe you should pivot in your career, or how did that pivot happen, and what did that look like for you?
So for me, when I was in Moncton, I was so focused on doing a job and taking care of everybody else, I forget about me. And I also had a friend who was a retired RCMP officer, died by suicide 12 days later. and I was the ranking officer at the time in the building, so I had to attend. I notified his family, the coroner, everything. And then I went back to work and pretended I was okay, because that's what we're taught, suck it up. And I did that. And then when I came back home after 4 months, unfortunately, I lost another friend to suicide. And that's when I hit a big wall and I was off work. I ended up being off work for 5 months and just trying to rebuild. And part of that is when I was in Moncton, I was so good at taking care of everybody else and making sure everybody else was okay. And people would come and talk to me and close the door, but I didn't have anyone taking care of me. And for example, after the suicide of my friend, nobody even asked me if I was okay. I just came back into the detachment and kept working like nothing happened. And so I just kept it all. And my coping strategy, which from the outside world looks really healthy, I've run. So, but I was running every day before or after, sometimes both with my shift. And I'd run to the point that I would either throw up or almost throw up before I'd turn around and run back. And over a 4 month period, I'm not real big to start with, I lost almost 20 pounds. So when my second friend hit, died, and I finally went and saw a doctor, my doctor, the first thing he said was, you need to step on a scale. And I was like, no, I'm in my 40s. I got a six pack. Like, this is cool. And he's like, yeah, no, get on a scale. So I did. And then took my blood pressure, which was 70/43. And he's like, you can't go back to work until you gain weight, your blood pressure goes up. And then he kind of laughed and he said, I've never ever said that before, because most people, your blood pressure is too high, so you got to bring it down, you got to lose weight, you got to get healthier. Me, it was, I need to eat, I need to gain weight, my blood pressure needs to go up.
You were exercising almost too much, basically.
Oh yeah, too much. And then just, yeah, when I'm one of those weird people, when I'm stressed, I completely forget about eating. So it was just a combination. And then we were short staffed. There was so much going on that when I was first in Moncton, I worked, I think it was 44 or 45 days straight without a day off because of the circumstances. And that in itself.
Was there ever a point in your career where you thought, this is too much for me and you just need to quit?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
It was a combination of a lot of things. Prior to that incident, I had gone through some really bad harassment, and that kind of left, some underlying issues for me. It also was hard to have faith in an institution that doesn't take care of its own people, and then Moncton reinforced that, being on scene when everything happened. And then the RCMP were actually taken to court under the labor law, and our commanding officer at the time didn't even show up in uniform. He showed up in a suit. So it was just, you lose faith in so many things. And then my own health, and then still working and just getting tired of the system and seeing people not being taken care of. And like my personal story with me being off work, I was told right away by our health services officer, I think it was only off maybe 2 weeks, and he looked at me and said, I don't see anything wrong with you. You can come back to work tomorrow. And it took me a meltdown saying, have you ever gone to work and had to cut your friend down? And he just looked at me. I said, I have. So I'm taking some time. And he had given me a referral to speak to someone, and I hadn't even gotten to speak to anybody yet. So that system is so broken. I forget how long I waited, but I waited well over a month before I even got to speak to a specialist with the OSI clinic. So it was over a month after I asked for help that I waited to be able to talk. And so that's one of the things, like, it's so important to me to talk about mental health, because so many first responders are suffering. And by the time we ask for help, it's really, really late, because we're from a culture where we're told to suck it up. You signed up for this, crying, emotion, everything is a weakness, and it's not. I think it's strength. But when we finally get to a point where we are so broken that we need help, we're not given help, or we're judged, or we're put on a waiting list. And then they wonder why so many people commit suicide or die by suicide.
Wow. So
Yeah,
there's a lot to fix in the system, obviously.
a lot, a lot.
Is that the reason why you left the RCMP at the end of the day?
It was all a like so many different things. And I had also been assaulted on the job and I got hurt. My wrist is really weak. So I got to a point where I couldn't complete a course of fire without my wrist getting really swollen, and my didn't have enough grip strength to finish a round of like the whole course of fire to qualify every year. So I gave up my firearm. And so I just got to a point where I'm in an office, not wearing my uniform. There's just so many things that led to my decision to leave.
Right. And what you do now, sort of walk me through a typical day on the job for you. I understand that you're helping people and organizations with communication. You just want to touch on that a little bit?
Yes. So I've been doing a lot of keynotes, I've been doing workshops, and I go in and I help teams or different, like there's different places where I've gone into, and we'll talk about safe communication, or how do we create a psychologically safe environment so people feel seen, heard, and they can speak up and ask for help or feel supported. Because in my world, that wasn't the case. It wasn't safe to ask for help because then you were looked at as weak. And that is so wrong. I think it takes more courage and more strength to ask for help than it does to stay quiet. And when people stay quiet, we see what happens. It doesn't just, end in suicides all the time, but people have a parent who is no longer a parent. They come home, they go downstairs, they watch TV. There's so many marriages that break up because their partner is not the person they married. Their partner is no longer there. It's a shell of a human being. So I'm about going in and let's create conversations. Let's create workspaces that are safe. Let's talk about boundaries and personal, like self-care. What does that look like? It's not a day at the spa, which would be really nice, but self-care is setting boundaries. Self-care is, I've had enough. This is my boundary. This is me taking, a time out. We give them to kids because they need minutes to calm and reflect. As
Yeah.
human beings, as we get older, I think we just need bigger timeouts.
Right.
Step outside, go for a walk, find your happy place in your house. If you like to read, find the book that makes you happy and read it. But just find things that bring you joy. Also find things that bring you community, because otherwise people are silent. And I love to help people in the workplace look at strategies. And I always say, just because you are, in my world, I come from rank, but just because you're a manager or you have a specific title doesn't give you the right to come in and start a conversation with people. You need to build trust. You need to build a relationship first before you ever have the right to ask a person a question. Because if you, for example, if you're missing lots of work, but your principal or your boss does not know that you have a son at home who's sick, but you show up at the very last minute on the bell and he gets, they're getting upset because you're not there early, you're leaving at, as soon as you can. How do you have that conversation when you don't know what's going on in that person's life? And maybe, in bigger organizations, when you have 200-300 people, well, the big manager obviously can't know everything, but there should be people in that organization who know their staff and know enough to notice that, oh, Nathan's not coming to coffee with us anymore. Nathan seems to be really tired. Go and talk to Nathan. Don't talk about him. That's my big thing when I talk about the
Yeah.
Privacy Act, is don't talk about people, talk with people.
I
And I
see.
think we develop that skill set and learn how to communicate and ask questions. Not, are you fine? Are you okay? Because then it's nothing more than a check on a box. And of course, I'm going to say, I'm okay. And nobody's okay or fine. So
Right.
it's asking questions, and lead with I statements. I have noticed that you seem really quiet lately. I have noticed you look really tired. What's going on? How can I support you? That's a whole lot different than how you doing?
Yeah. Everyone's saying, how are you? Everyone, the typical answer, oh, I'm fine. How are you? Everyone carries on, but we don't know what's behind the surface, right? When you're doing these speaking engagements, it's internationally as well. Have you spoken in other countries?
I've spoken over in England last summer.
Oh, okay. How was that?
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I'm flying to Labrador City in August. So that one is kind of exciting too, because that's a place I haven't been. So I'm looking
Okay.
forward to Labrador City. I'm there for 3 days.
And these talks that you give, they're all about resilience, mental health. That's your theme?
Primarily, and then communication strategies. I've done some talks with various women's group as well because I did hold the domestic violence portfolio for our province. So I talk openly about that, my personal experience as well as my professional experience. I talk about the power of belief, which is a keynote that I do. I've done that in the schools as well. And when I go to Lab City, the interesting thing there, it started out as a conversation about communication and teamwork and everything else. And then we got into a conversation about due diligence and criminal negligence. And so I'm actually putting on my police hat and bringing some of that into their talk. And just 2 weeks ago, I did a talk for Ignite, and they have an 8-week cohort for new immigrant women. And so I talked about boundaries and communication, but I also said I'd love to put my hat on and cover some of the law because I've dealt with women who've come from countries where they're nothing more than property. And here
Right.
it's different. And I would love to. So they're like excited because that is definitely something they needed. And so I talked openly and just shared that, you know, as a person in Canada, whether you have been born here, lived here for 5 years or 5 days, you have the same rights. You have the same laws that protect you, that you
Yeah.
have choices. And that felt really good, like that conversation with those women. So I do vary my talks based on what is needed in that workplace or in that situation, because I
Yeah.
have different places I can draw from.
Do you ever speak with schools and young people?
Yes, I have been the president of TAD, which is our Teens Against Drinking and Driving program, for almost 20 years. So I've done a lot of talks in schools, a lot of talks around choices, better choices, drinking and driving or impaired driving by any substance.
Right. So if you were to leave uh, some advice for young people starting off their careers, what kind of advice would you give to them?
Oh my gosh, so much. I think it's so important that regardless of your age, you can be 40 and change your entire world and career, but people need to decide what it is that brings them joy because it's a long time working in something you don't like. And there's nothing wrong, in my opinion. I know some parents won't like me to say this, but in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with a gap year. If you don't know what you want to do, take a year off, and if you have the means, travel or work and get a feel of the world and see what you like because there's nothing worse than spending that or tens of thousands of dollars and going to university and you're in your second or first year and you're like, oh my god, I hate this, and
Yeah.
you already have a huge debt load. So until you know, maybe, or even before that, if you can volunteer someplace and get some real world experience to see if you actually like that. Because, a lot of people think that policing is super cool because of what they see on TV, but what they see on TV is so far from the truth. It's not the same. Same with firemen. Like they respond to a lot of things that are really heavy as well. Any first responder, nurses, doctors, everybody in that field. And so I think people need to sit back and find out what that job really is and not how it's been glorified on television or in the movies. and then have knowledge, real knowledge of what they're stepping into and deciding if that's what they really are signing up for. Because being a police officer is not just like, woohoo, you know, going in and kicking doors and all that fun stuff. No, before you kick that door, there's weeks, months, years sometimes of surveillance and work and warrants for that 5 minutes of kicking a door. And then there's tons of paperwork. And then, you know, like, you see so many things that you can't unsee. And that's what people don't realize, is that no matter how many years pass, there's certain things that if I close my eyes or drive by certain places, certain smells, certain things, it just brings back memories. And I don't
Is
think
it more like PTSD on that?
definitely, definitely. There's so much research that shows that the average person in a lifetime will experience anywhere from 2 to 4 traumatic events. A police officer, an average police officer over a 20-year career can experience anywhere from 6 to 800.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
And so that's the number that you've experienced, basically.
probably.
Wow. So
And you never know what's going to affect somebody either. Like there's things that I've been through and that were really bad and they affected me a little. And then there's other things that I went through that seemingly wouldn't be so bad, but still really hurt.
yeah, but sometimes it takes time for this to sort of sink in and make an impression on you, right?
Yeah, and some things never leave.
Yeah. Well, listen, Tammy, you're obviously making a huge difference in so many lives, and in the nature of the work that you do, you're helping people build resiliency and mental health, and I think it's fantastic. I want to thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. And what's any final thoughts for the viewers that you want to share?
Mainly if they need help, like build a community, find somebody you trust. If it's in a workplace, find somebody you trust. Maybe you can't talk to a boss because they're a part of the problem. But find somebody you trust, because as soon as we talk about things, we feel so much better. And sometimes it takes away that heaviness and that accumulation where we just feel we're so alone. And I know that once I started talking, I had people come and say to me, thank you, because I feel that way, or I've been through that. And it's just eye-opening, because so many people think that they're the only person, and if I say anything, I'm going to be judged. People will think lesser of me, but they might find that they have a lot of allies. They have a lot of other people who haven't voiced that. And it's just finding the right people that you can trust. Maybe it's a parent or a family member, a coworker, a friend, but find somebody that they can talk with.
Tammy, thank you so much for joining us. It's great. You're doing fantastic work.
Thank
And I
you.
wish you the very best going forward. Keep up the great work.
Thanks.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.